To wrap up the speeches tonight, our third speaker is our president, Mr. James Sauerwein. A manual speech from his event communication manual speeches by management. It is his lesson number 4. The objectives of this manual project are introduce a new idea or change to establish operations or methods. Show the audience how the change will benefit them. Overcome any resistance to the new idea and gain the audience support. A few personal facts about the speaker. He's an Iowa fellow from Burlington, Iowa, who knows the value of communication because he was a telemarketer for many years. Time required for this manual speech is 10 to 12 minutes. Title of the speech is Don't Change Who You Are, Simply Become More of Who You Are. Will you please help me welcome Mr. President James Sauerwein.
You can just go ahead and take a seat.
Okay.
That might be uncomfortable for 10 to 12.
Where's the timer? You didn't start yet, did you? No. Okay.
Yep. Ladies and gentlemen, in speaking in leadership, you start where you are and you do it poorly. You do it afraid, and something happens. Distinguished dignitaries, most welcome guests, and fellow Toastmasters. There's some key words in what I just said. Afraid. Many people will not reach their true potential because they lack the willingness to change. But what if we looked at change a little differently? What if we didn't look at it as something that's adverse? And we said something like, you know, don't change who you are. Simply become more of who you are. A lot of you might not know who I am, but I am, as they have mentioned, the president of this Toastmasters Club. And I can remember way, way back, I don't know how many years, Joe, at least a couple, when I first came to the store. I was resistant to change. I wanted to just sit, I didn't really want to participate. I know the first time I was called up for a table topic, it was something about the Super Bowl that was going on. I knew what teams were in the Super Bowl, but I was jumping back and forth. I was saying the wrong things. I might have used some terms from basketball or baseball to talk about throwing the football. It was horrible. It is what I would basically describe as a failure. But there was people in this club. Joan Johansson, and some of you might not know, but her daughter Jackie Johansson, they pushed me to become more of who I am. They pushed me to change, to not sit back. So I didn't take this sitting down. And it was an unspoken rule, and I think Mr. Lucier might remember, but I told everybody, every single table topics master, that they need to call me up every single meeting. Because I was afraid to come up here, but I wanted to force myself out of my comfort zone so that I could become better. And I kept doing that week after week after week. And eventually some opportunities came along. We had a spring conference that was going to come to the Fort Dodge Correctional Facility. And our club was going to be a part of it. But the rules of this club is you don't just get to go to a contest. You have to beat out your fellow Toastmasters, and then you are able to compete and represent the Changing Winds Toastmasters Club. So I knew it wasn't going to be easy, but I put my name in to be one of the competitors so that I could toss my lot in and potentially go to this contest. We had the in-club contest, and not only did I do well, but I was able to get first place. I had a secured position to go to the contest. Day of the contest arrived, and I remember how many different table topics I had my cellie toss at me. Ridiculous stuff about if you were on the moon and you were about ready to run out of oxygen, things like this. And I practiced so that I could get ready for this contest. And it came, and I remember, many of you might not have been to a contest, but you have to sit in a different room as the other people give their table topics in the gymnasium. We were over here, and the contestants we were talking amongst ourselves, and I was amping myself up, and And I went in there and I put down the best table topic I have ever given in my life. It was incredible. It was like I was on fire. I didn't stutter. I didn't have any crutch words. And I said exactly what I wanted to say. And I ended up winning first place that day. Now, I could have sit back and not participated. I could have been afraid to fail. I could have said, well, I'm not very good at this. I've been afraid to get up here and talk in front of people, but I wasn't. And some of the help that I got had pushed me to that. And I didn't change who I was. I became more of who I was. I have another story for you guys. And it's about my dad. You don't have to read this article, but you'll see some big headlines. Actually, I need this one. They did an article on my dad because he's been working in the same place for 48 years. And he's only missed one day of work. One day in 48 years. Another thing about my dad that you might not know is that he's stuck in his ways. He is the definition of being resistant to change. And he goes about his day. I can tell you exactly what he does. 5 days a week, he works 40 hours a week. Friday comes along, and he'll drink beer. He'll listen to the radio, probably the Iowa Hawkeyes, and now Iowa State Cyclones because my brother graduated from Iowa State. And he does that. And then the weekend, when Sunday arrives, he'll put on a Sunday dinner for the family. Everybody comes over. It's a big thing. And he does this week after week, month after month, year after year. And he's just been doing it for nearly 5 decades. And he got stuck in his ways so much. But let me tell you something. One thing that you will find to be true in life is that the only thing that is constant is that everything changes. Now you can either ride with the change or you can be like the fish that swim upstream. My dad was one of the fish that was swimming upstream against the current. But 3 months ago, and I don't talk about my private life, I don't bring it in here, but my dad had a minor stroke. And I knew something was wrong because it was Sunday when I called and I didn't get an answer on the phone. But he had had a minor stroke and he was in the hospital. So my dad had to go out of the things he was comfortable doing. It started off with the hospital telling him that he wasn't going to be able to drive a car. He wasn't going to be able to go to work. So essentially he was going to have to sit at home all day long. Well, the family wasn't going to have it. We forced my father to go to Ames, Iowa to be with my brother at his house so that he could do something different. And he reluctantly agreed to do this. He went up to my brother's house, and my brother, he is an avid fan of board games. And when I say avid, I mean there is probably nobody else who loves playing board games. Every time I call him, that's what he's talking about. In fact, every Sunday when I call him, they are in the middle of a board game, a different type of board game. And they took my father along to one of these things. And I'm sure he didn't necessarily enjoy it. But we had a visit that weekend, and my dad was talking, and he was saying, you know, he didn't really want to go at first, but after he went, he enjoyed himself. And to make a long story short, my dad, 48 years, same place, never missed a day, does everything week after week. Now, instead of saying, what am I going to do on the weekend? Am I going to listen to an Iowa State game or an Iowa Hawkeye game? My dad's talking about potentially going and seeing an Iowa State game or an Iowa Hawkeye game. So he was resistant to change, but it hit him anyway, because change will hit you whether you're ready for it or not. And you can either, something good can come out of it, or we all know that the opposite can happen. My dad has started to change. He no longer drinks. He's down to 3 cigarettes a day, and he's happier than ever before when I talk to him. And I could mention another person because I'm kind of going on here, but another person who almost gave up on coming in here and giving speeches is a good friend of mine, Rene Zarate. Because he had a couple of times that he thought that he didn't do so well up here. But I told him, I'd like to hear this guy come up and speak, because he speaks from the heart. And yeah, he had notes before and he switched it up and came in tonight, and that was probably the best speech I have ever heard him give. And it's because he didn't give up. He didn't say, well, I'm completely done, I'm just going to sit back. I implore every single one of you to not sit back and hear. This is where, as he said, you can fail. What's the worst that can happen? If I completely bomb this speech tonight, my goodness, what's the worst that's going to happen? I'm going to go home tonight, I'm going to turn on the TV. I no longer watch CNN because I don't like what they're talking about, but I'll sit back, I'll go to work tonight, it'll be tomorrow, I'll work out in the afternoon, and everybody in this room will forget that Mr. Sauerwein failed. But you have to take that first step, and eventually something happens. You're good at what you do. You're winning a contest. You're able to speak as eloquently as you want, with no nervousness. I have some rules I want to leave you with. I put these together. I call them rules of speaking, leadership, and quite possibly life. Show up. That's the first part. Simply show up. And then participate. Figure out what you're good at and exploit it. Figure out what you're weak at and work on it. An honest effort does not guarantee you a perfect speech, but it almost always prevents failure. Bad things happen to everyone. Those who succeed find a way to keep going when the sharks attack. Another big one is, smart people ask for help before it's too late. And this is one of the big ones, because I always give speeches telling people to go out of their comfort zones, to risk failure, to never allow an opportunity to pass them by. And so this rule is very specific. Defensive living and defensive speaking ensure only mediocrity. To accomplish anything outstanding requires some risk. And finally, communicators and leaders live more in 24 hours than most people live in 124, because they look intensely at things. Gentlemen, you can go through life and you can be resistant to change. And one of these days, change will hit you square upside the head, and you'll be forced to change. Or you can look at life as Mr. Hamilton said when he gave his motivational thought. Like it is exactly what he said. An opportunity to do some of the greatest things. To have more fun speaking and communicating and leading and doing some of the things that, quite frankly, you haven't done before. And have more fun doing these things than you've ever had in your entire life. Or you can sit back and watch the world pass you by. But don't be resistant to change. Work on the things you need to work on. And don't think about it as changing yourself, but simply becoming more of yourself. Mr. Toastmaster.